Well, good day, Comets. So this is your spring 2024 administration and security training for our spring Ohio State test assessments that are coming up. Third grade through high school educators and staff who will be administering our OST will need to go through this training. For those of you who have never done this before, there is a course that we'd want you to take. If you've never taken the test administration course, we'd like you to do that. You will get a certificate at the end of that. That's approximately 30 minutes separate from this. You will get a certificate and you will hold on to that on your own. Before we begin, we have the entire TA manual for the spring 2024 here. This will be important for our building test coordinators to make sure they have access to or possibly make a copy of. In addition, we have the updated Ohio Accessibility Manual for all of our staff and our ISs. You can click on that here, and that actually takes you to the an Ohio Department of Education and Workforce website. As a reminder, the areas that need to be tested: 3rd through 8th, ELA and math, 5th and 8th, science, and in the high school we have ELA 2, Algebra 1, Geometry, Biology, American History, and American Government. Our spring 2024 testing window, you can see the state test window there, and then you can see our district 15-day window there. And as you can see, as we've done in the past, we try to butt up our window to the end of the state testing window. There is a week of overlap between the ELA and Math, Science, and Social Studies tests. That last week here in ELA, what you'll see is that we don't have anyone testing that last week. That'll be completely for makeups. What you will see is a few tests begin to pop up the week of April 22nd, but a majority will happen that second week. And then the last week of May, you will have makeups only. You might want to pause here. You will receive a copy of this if you are proctoring a test, proctoring an assessment. This is the length of time that has not changed from years past. I always remind people ELA tests 6 through 8 and ELA 2 can receive an additional 15 minutes above the 105 minute window. So really you'll be looking at a possible 2-hour test at a max. It is not a 2-hour and 15-minute test. It is a 2-hour max. You can't take the 30 minutes and plug it onto one or the other part. It is 15 max for each test. Scheduling considerations: our building test coordinators as well as our building administrators will be working with our student services in order to make sure that our students are receiving the appropriate accommodations for small group, one-on-one, and any read aloud services needed. We will have headphones are available for math, the math test, as it is a universal accommodation. The makeup tests do have to occur within the 15-day testing window, which is why we do not start new tests on that last week. We allow for that to be completely available for makeups. The calculator guidance has not changed. The one unique calculator rule is in our 6th and 7th grade math, where calculators are not allowed on part 1 but are allowed on part 2. An additional guide for calculators can be found here. At this time, the schedule for the assessments has been created and that has been shared with everyone. A student can take more than one assessment on one day, especially if we get into some absences, so that is allowed. And so you are here because you are a test administrator. You have some responsibilities as a TA. You must be aware of the state and district test security procedures and follow them at all times. You have to have access to student information and what their needs are. You also have to be given the student's sign-in ticket for the testing days. Make sure you make yourself familiar with the accessibility features and accommodations for students. You need to know how to establish a test session, adjust test settings, approve students to test and monitor, and stop test administration using the TA administrator interface. I go back to that original slide that has the test administration certification course that will really help you a lot with understanding the process of the test. Make sure you know the time that's available for each test, which I've already shared with you, which you will also receive a hard copy with. And then there's a TA checklist that you can see here that you will also have within your packet. Make sure you are aware of that. There's a troubleshooting guide for you. Every building has a test coordinator. You will receive information on who to get a hold of if you are experiencing some troubleshooting. There is the additional calculator policy, and this is just a full list of appendices here. If you're interested in how the machine scoring occurs, you can click on these prompts in the slide. And now we're going to get to testing security. We're not going to go through all this, but we have to know that there's an ethical standard as a administrator of the tests. Here are some things that you need to follow. It's not an exhaustive list. The following are examples of security violations. You cannot review a test booklet or a student's answer document to review test content or student responses. You cannot use a student's login information to access an online test in order to review the test content. You cannot review the test and create a study guide or in some way release the test questions to students. You cannot coach a student in any manner to indicate the correct answer or any answer before, during the test, or even after for that matter. And you cannot discuss test questions with colleagues or students after the test had been administered, which may affect students who are tested on a later date. My suggestion for you would be not to talk about the test until the testing window has closed, and I guess for the district and for the state. There's some ethical scenarios that I'm not going to go through every one, but I'd like you to pause the video and go through each. Okay, and before testing begins, you got to make sure you get comfortable with the Ohio State test portal. We're going to want everyone to log in and verify their account way in advance of the test itself. I will be sending out an email just to remind everyone in February to get in and check their account and verify they can get on. I've already provided the manuals to you. The practice site is the same site as the test portal itself. You can have your students go in and practice getting onto and getting into the site, so it's not new day one. There's also blueprints for all content areas of previous test questions if you'd like to take a look at those. Before the test day, you will receive a roster with student testing tickets. It will have both username and passwords for those students. You'll have a whole class list as well as their individual tickets. You have to make sure that your testing room is prepared, that students are separated by an appropriate distance for independent work. There should be no charts or posters or maps within the room that would help them on that particular test. Students will receive 2 sheets of blank paper for ELA tests. They can get more than that. You can also have paper for the math test as well for scrap. Obviously, nothing they put on that paper is going to be graded. That paper will also have to be turned in at the end of testing, and we will have to shred it. The script, you will receive a hard copy of the script, but if you want that script early, you can find that here on the online testing highlights and script. During the test, you should be actively monitoring your students. If a student needs to pause his or her test, they may do so. You will need to keep that time that the test was paused on a separate sheet of paper. If a student's out of the room for 2 or 3 minutes, then they would have an additional 2 or 3 minutes for that assessment. So their clock on their test would pause as well. If a student pauses test on a Monday, they will not be able to go back into the test on a Tuesday. Okay, that would be something that I would have to submit to the state to make sure we can reopen that. Once a student is finished with their test, they need to submit the test. There's 2 or 3, are you finished? Are you sure you're finished? You're submitting steps that student needs to take place. If they end up not submitting the test, it'll automatically submit for them, but it won't show up immediately. So you might get a phone call from myself or your building test coordinator saying, hey, can you get Cody to go back in and submit that test because he didn't do it yet. Although it's permissible for test administrators to give students a break, make sure that test security is being maintained throughout the entire time. In different buildings, we'll have monitors for the restroom breaks. 1 student out at a time is appropriate. We don't want to make sure no one's going to the restroom and talking about the test that they're taking. After the test is completed, students need to stay off their electronic devices. They need to have silent work to complete. So let me remind, this is specifically an issue sometimes in the high school. They cannot finish their test and get on their phone. Cannot happen. Students can also not work on silent work that's associated with the test they just completed. So I can't take the math assessment, put my computer away, and then get out some math homework. Can't do that. It's got to be different than the assessment that they're taking. Obviously, there's going to be a sheet that goes around for support. You can always give me a call or Bethany or Tom for technical support, and then every building has a building test coordinator. I will continue to push the readiness assessment, which is a great source for students to get comfortable with the test, but it's also a great source for high quality student data. I will continue to let anyone who wants to hear know that the readiness assessment would be a great HQSD data point for you and for growth points for any of the tested areas. Once you're finished, make sure you come in and complete that form. It's 2 questions. Your TA certificate, you need to hold on for your own personal records. This training must be completed 1 time during each school year.